After I refused to give my daughter the business, she invited me to a reconciliation dinner. I arrived hoping for peace, but they had lawyers ready to force me to sign papers on the voluntary transfer of the business. They handed me the documents with cold smiles, confident of victory. But I smiled and said, "It's funny, I brought someone too." When the door opened and my guest entered, their faces turned pale and their smiles disappeared. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. I sat in my office, gazing out at the Ohio River, flowing steadily below, its surface rippling under the spring sun. It was late March 2025, and the water seemed to carry away the day's minor frustrations like it always did. My desk was cluttered with shipping manifests and route maps for the next expansion of Peterson Logistics, our family company that had grown from one truck to a fleet of 50 across Cincinnati. I poured 30 years into it, sacrificing weekends and vacations, all for Emily. But that afternoon, the door burst open without a knock. And there she was, storming past my assistant like a force of nature. Emily's heels clicked sharply against the hardwood floor, echoing in the small space. Her face was flushed, not with genuine anger, but that calculated intensity I'd seen her use in negotiations. She clutched a thick binder, her knuckles white around the edges. "Dad, this has to end now," she snapped, slamming the documents onto my desk. A family photo from a vacation in Florida teetered and tipped over, the frame cracking slightly against the wood, Mark's arm around her shoulder in the picture, both smiling like everything was perfect. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my voice steady. "Emily, what's this about? You can't just barge in here." "Oh, I can and I will," she cut me off, her eyes narrowing. "Your outdated methods are killing the company. Profits are down 15 this quarter because you're stuck in the 80s. Hand it over, Dad. Transfer the business to me voluntarily, or we'll make it happen another way." I picked up the binder slowly, flipping through the pages. Charts and reports, all neatly printed, but I spotted the manipulations right away. Expenses inflated, revenues understated. "These numbers aren't right," I said firmly. "I've checked the books myself. This is fabricated." She crossed her arms, her lips curling into a dismissive smirk. "Fabricated? That's rich coming from you. You're the one burying us with your loyalty over profit nonsense. I've got investors lined up who see the potential. Modernize, expand our digital footprint, things you refuse to do." The phone on my desk buzzed, and before I could reach for it, she hit the speaker button. Mark's face appeared on the video call screen, his tie perfectly knotted, background a sleek home office. "John, listen to her," he said, his tone smooth but edged with condescension. "We're doing this for the family's future. Sign the papers or we'll have to involve lawyers. Scandals aren't good for business, you know." I felt a knot tighten in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I'd trusted them, given Mark a job when his financial advisory firm tanked, paid for Emily's MBA. This wasn't just a demand, it was betrayal, wrapped in false concern. I touched the old model truck on my desk, the one from my first shipping contract, its paint worn smooth from years of handling. It reminded me of the sacrifices, the late nights building something lasting. "I'm not signing anything," I replied, standing up to meet her gaze. "This company is my legacy, built on fairness and hard work. You want it, earn it properly." Her face hardened, and she snatched the binder back. "You'll regret this. We're not done." She turned on her heel, the door slamming behind her with a finality that shook the walls. After she left, I sat at the table for a long time, sorting through my thoughts, but fatigue took over. The river outside the window was darkening, reflecting the evening sky. I packed my things and went home, where the silence of the old house on the edge of the city embraced me like an old friend. The next morning, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, I checked my email and saw a new letter from Emily with the subject line, "Final warning, company finances." I closed the laptop, the email's threat lingering like a bad taste. Sleep was out of the question. I needed to prepare. Grabbing my coat, I drove back to the office under the early morning light, the Ohio River's steady flow, a quiet companion. Settling at my desk, I pulled out the original ledgers, cross-checking them against her forged reports. The river outside gleamed, indifferent to the storm brewing, as I steeled myself for her next move. When my phone rang, Emily's name flashing, I was ready. My phone rang almost immediately after. Emily's voice was clipped. Meeting at noon, Dad. Conference room downtown. Be there. This is your last chance to bow out gracefully. I hung up the phone, feeling the tension tighten in my chest. The Ohio River flowing outside the window seemed to be the only constant in this chaos. I quickly gathered myself, checking the folder with the original reports that could refute their accusations. The drive to the Cincinnati business district was short, but every turn seemed like a challenge. I parked outside the rented conference room, gripped the steering wheel, took a deep breath, and headed inside, ready for their next move. I drove through the Cincinnati business district, the streets lined with budding trees under a crisp April sky. The Ohio River ran alongside my route, a constant companion. Parking outside the rented meeting space, a neutral ground they'd chosen, no doubt to avoid my office. I gripped the steering wheel for a moment, steadying myself. Justice wasn't about lashing out. It was about smart moves, exposing the truth step by step. Inside, the room was packed. Employees I'd hired and trained over the years sat around a long table, avoiding my eyes. Emily stood at the front, a projector screen glowing with slides. Mark was there in person this time, leaning against the wall with that smug smile, arms folded. "Glad you could make it, John," he said as I entered, his voice dripping with false warmth. Emily didn't waste time. She clicked to the first slide, a graph plunging downward. "Ladies and gentlemen, our profits are tanking because of outdated leadership. Dad's methods, loyalty programs, manual dispatching are costing us. We need modernization, apps, partnerships. I've got the vision to turn this around." Whispers rippled through the room. One driver, Kevin, whom I'd mentored since he was a kid, shifted uncomfortably but stayed silent. I spotted the bribes in their eyes, the promised raises, perhaps, or threats of layoffs. I stood, interrupting her flow. "This is manipulated data, Emily. I've seen the real numbers. You're spreading lies to force me out." She laughed coldly, clicking to another slide. "Lies? Here's proof. Emails from clients complaining about delays, all under your watch." Mark stepped forward, handing out packets. "We've got support, John. Half the staff agrees it's time for change. Sign over control or we'll vote you out." The room tensed. I tried logging into the company portal on my phone to pull up the actual reports, but access denied flashed red. They'd locked me out, right there in front of everyone. Gasps echoed. Even loyal ones looked doubtful now. Rumors had spread overnight, whispers of my incompetence eroding the authority I'd earned. "You're finished here," Emily said, her voice low and triumphant. "Hand it over or we'll drag this through the courts and ruin the reputation you've clung to." I met her stare, then Mark's. Their greed blinded them to the cracks in their plan. His past financial tricks I'd vaguely heard about, her impulsiveness in pushing too hard. I didn't yell. Instead, I gathered my things calmly. "This isn't over, you'll see." As I left, the door clicking shut behind me, a cracked photo from the company's founding caught my eye on the table. Me and the first team, now symbolic of the break. I stepped out into the crisp April air, the conference building's glass doors reflecting the budding trees. My footsteps echoed on the pavement as I made my way to the car, the weight of their betrayal settling heavier with each step. Sliding into the driver's seat, I glanced back at the building one last time, then pulled onto the road, the Ohio River unfolding beside me, its rush pulling memories to the surface. Driving home along the river, the water rushing beside the road, my mind raced with memories. Emily's first steps in the warehouse, Mark's grateful handshake when I bailed him out. But those were gone, replaced by resolve. I needed a plan, something clever to turn this around, and as the miles blurred, an idea began to form. As the river rushed beside the road, its steady flow pulling at my thoughts like an undercurrent, I let the memories flood in. The drive home from that humiliating meeting stretched out under the fading April light, the Ohio's banks lined with fresh green shoots that mocked the chill in my bones. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles paling slightly, but I kept my breathing even. No point in raging. Justice came from clear thinking, not fury. Yet as the miles blurred, fragments of the past surfaced, triggered by the water's relentless motion time slipping away, much like the years I'd given to them. I remember the day after Susan's funeral back in '92. The warehouse was empty, pallets scattered like forgotten promises. Emily, just 5, clung to my leg as I knelt under a rusted freight truck, a wrench turning slowly in the dim light. Grease stained my hands, dripping onto the concrete in dark spots that spread like grief. "Daddy's gotta work," I'd murmured, prying her small fingers loose so she could play in the corner with her dolls. That night, I stayed until dawn, arranging shipments to pay the bills, vowing silently that she'd never know want. The business started small, one bay, endless hours. But it grew because I poured everything into it, skipping sleep, ignoring the ache in my back. Family loyalty, I thought then, was worth every drop. The road curved, and another memory hit. Emily's high school graduation, her cap tossed high amid cheers. I'd skipped a golf trip with old buddies that summer, the one I'd dreamed of for years, to cover her college tuition. I signed the check at the kitchen table, the pen scratching like a reluctant confession. "Thanks, Dad," she'd said over the phone later, her voice bright and distant. "You're the best." Now that note she'd sent, yellowed in a drawer somewhere, felt like irony sharpened to a point. I'd built expansions, hired more hands, all to secure her future, believing she'd carry it forward with the same fairness. Then there was Mark. I shifted lanes as the thought darkened. When he first pitched his advisory idea years back, I saw the red flags, vague numbers, overconfident smiles. But Emily loved him, so I loaned the startup cash, dipping into savings meant for my retirement. "Appreciate it, John," he'd said at our dinner table, clinking glasses with that smooth charm. "This'll pay off big." It didn't. His firm folded quietly, whispers of shady deals I chose to ignore for her sake. Instead, I brought him into the logistics company, teaching him the ropes, thinking family meant second chances. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, jolting me back. The dashboard clock showed late afternoon, shadows lengthening over the water. I glanced at the screen, my lawyer, David. I answered, voice steady. "David, what's new?" His tone was urgent, crackling through the speaker. "John, they've filed preliminary papers, claiming mismanagement, pushing for a forced transfer. It's aggressive. Looks like they're lining up witnesses from your staff." I pulled into my driveway, the gravel crunching under the tires, the house looming quiet and familiar. The river's murmur faded behind me, but the weight of his words lingered. "Witnesses, after all I've done?" "Exactly. We need to counter fast, dig into their angles. Anything off in their finances?" I killed the engine, staring at the front door, its paint chipped from winters past. The flashbacks echoed. Neglected doctor visits during the '08 crash, when I worked doubles to keep payroll going. Chest pains dismissed as stress all for them. Now this. Justice wasn't vengeance. It was balance. Their greed had tipped the scales, and I'd right them methodically. But as I gripped the wheel one last time, David's hint of deeper issues, something about Mark's old records, sparked a flicker. Action was inevitable, and the plan that had begun forming on the drive sharpened into focus. The door clicked shut behind me, echoing through the empty hall like a final punctuation on the day's chaos. I hung up with David mid-sentence, promising to call back soon, and paced into the living room. The space felt smaller now, walls lined with photos of better times, Emily's wedding, company picnics, each one a reminder of what I'd built and what they aimed to dismantle. I headed to the kitchen, flicking on the light, and started brewing coffee. The machine gurgled to life, steam rising in lazy curls that grounded my swirling thoughts. No more drifting in the past. Fairness demanded I act, not dwell. I rifled through old files on the table, papers spilling out contracts, ledgers from years ago connecting the dots. Emily's impulsive emails during her MBA, pushing for risky expansions I'd vetoed. Mark's evasive answers about his past clients. Their attacks weren't just greedy, they smelled of desperation. Why the rush? I sipped the hot coffee, its bitterness mirroring my resolve. Surrender wasn't an option. I'd defend my legacy step by step, exposing their weaknesses before they buried mine. Setting the mug down, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number David had recommended, a private investigator, discreet and thorough. It rang twice before a gruff voice answered. "Harris Investigations. How can I help?" Mr. Harris, John Peterson. My lawyer suggested you. I need background on two people, quietly. A pause, then his tone shifted to professional curiosity. Details? My daughter Emily Brown and her husband Mark. Focus on finances and irregularities. Mark's got a history in financial advising. Check for unreported deals, manipulations. Understood. Timeline? Fast as possible. I'll wire a retainer. We wrapped up quickly, his assurances clipped but reassuring. I'll start tonight. Expect preliminaries soon. Hanging up, I leaned against the counter, the coffee cooling in my hand. Their betrayal stung, but emotion wouldn't win this. Clever moves would. Emily's impulsiveness. She'd always jumped at quick wins, like that failed marketing push last year. Mark's schemes? If Harris found proof, it could unravel everything. Hours slipped by as dusk fell outside, the house settling into quiet. I reviewed more files, noting anomalies in recent reports they'd waved at me. Then my email chimed. Harris's first report, sooner than expected. I opened it at the desk, the screen glowing in the dim room. Scans of old documents. Mark's firm dissolution papers, buried complaints from partners about creative accounting. But one line jumped out. An anomaly in a transfer, hinting at funds siphoned off, linked vaguely to our company. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just history, it connected to now. I stared at the screen, a plan faintly forming, pieces clicking like a well-oiled engine. But as the night deepened, questions loomed. How deep did it go? And what would I uncover next? The screen's glow cast long shadows across the desk, illuminating the scattered papers like unearthed relics from a forgotten war. It was well past midnight in late April, the house silent, except for the occasional creak of settling wood. And I delved deeper into Harris's report, cross-referencing every line with my own records under the dim lamp. My fingers scrolled through digital archives, pausing on Emily's financial trail first, a series of credit alerts I'd accessed through a secure link Harris provided. She had racked up debts from impulsive investments, stock trades gone sour that she'd hidden behind company expense claims. I noted the patterns: a rash buy in volatile tech shares last fall, followed by frantic emails to brokers begging for extensions. It tied directly to her urgency now. Those losses explained the push to seize control for quick cash infusions. I leaned back, rubbing my eyes, the chair groaning softly. Justice wasn't about gloating over her flaws. It was correction, balancing the scales she'd tipped with her greed. Pushing on, I opened Mark's section. Archived filings from his defunct firm revealed manipulated client accounts, revenues inflated on paper to lure investors, then siphoned off in fees that vanished into offshore shadows. One deal stood out, a 20-20 partnership where he'd falsified audits, leaving partners high and dry. I'd ignored whispers back then for Emily's sake, but now it glared like a warning light on a dashboard. Sipping cold coffee from a mug that had gone stale hours ago, I connected the dots. His schemes mirrored the forged reports they'd waved at me. Same sleight of hand with numbers. The tension built as I highlighted discrepancies, my pulse steady but quickening. This evidence could dismantle their facade, but I needed confirmation. I dialed Harris, the phone cool against my ear. He picked up on the third ring, his voice gravelly with late-night fatigue. "Peterson, got something already?" "That witness you mentioned in Mark's old deals. Any more on them?" I asked, keeping my tone measured. A rustle of papers on his end. "Yeah, a former partner. Says Mark cooked the books to hide losses, promised big returns that never came. Got emails backing it up, sending them over now." "Good." "And Emily's debts? Linked to any company funds?" "Subtle dips in petty cash align with her withdrawals. Impulsive, like you said. She panics and grabs what's close." We ended the call abruptly, his assurance lingering. The new files pinged in my inbox, and as I opened them, the forgery proof leapt out. Side-by-side comparisons of Mark's past audits and our current declining profits charts. Identical manipulations, decimal shifts, phantom expenses. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, a faint smile tugging at my lips as the idea solidified. This wasn't the end. It was the lever I'd use to pry open their world. But as the clock ticked toward dawn, the weight of what came next pressed in, demanding the first careful move. Hanging up with Harris, I stared at the files, their weight urging action. Sitting at home felt too exposed. I needed a neutral space to send the emails without risking traces back to me. I grabbed my laptop and drove downtown, choosing a quiet coffee shop with secure Wi-Fi, a place where I could blend into the morning crowd unnoticed. Dawn broke with a soft haze over Cincinnati, the Ohio River glinting in the early May light as I headed out, laptop tucked under my arm. I'd slept little, but resolve sharpened the edges of my fatigue. I chose a quiet coffee shop downtown, one with anonymous Wi-Fi and booths tucked in corners away from prying eyes. Settling into the worn vinyl seat, the hum of the espresso machine blending with muffled conversations, I anonymized my IP through a VPN Harris had suggested. Simple precautions to keep my tracks clean. The compiled packet waited on my screen. Scanned forgeries, Emily's debt trails, Mark's old schemes, all anonymized but damning. I finalized the email to key investors, those Emily had bragged about lining up, attaching the evidence with a neutral subject line. Concerns regarding Peterson Logistics leadership transition. Size. My cursor hesitated for a breath, then I clicked send. A quiet thrill coursed through me. Not vengeance, but equilibrium restored one fact at a time. I monitored the responses from a burner account, sipping fresh coffee as the shop filled with morning regulars. The first ping came within minutes. An investor named Mr. Roberts, his reply terse, "These discrepancies are alarming, need verification before proceeding." Another followed from a venture group. "If this is accurate, we're out. Explanations required immediately." The chain reaction started slow, then built. I watched as one pulled their tentative commitment, citing integrity issues. Fairness meant shining a light on their shadows, and this was the beam cutting through. Next, I placed a discreet call to Kevin, the loyal driver who'd avoided my eyes at the meeting. His phone rang twice. "Mr. Peterson?" His voice was cautious, laced with unease. "Kevin, just a heads up," I said evenly. "Check the latest quarterlies against the originals in the safe. Discrepancies might surprise you." A pause, then his tone shifted to wary curiosity. "You mean those reports they showed? I'll look. Thanks for the tip." We hung up without fanfare, but I knew the seed was planted. Doubt spreading like roots under soil. As I refreshed the inbox, more rattled messages trickled in. "Pulling support until clarified," one read. The sender's frustration evident in the clipped words. The coffee shop's door chimed with new arrivals, the scent of baked goods wafting over, but my focus stayed glued. This move undermined their credibility without a direct confrontation, letting the facts do the work. Yet, as the morning wore on, my phone lit up with a text from Emily, her impulsiveness cracking through in hurried typos. "Dad, what have you done? Investors are backing out. Call me now. This is ruining everything." I stepped outside, the wind carrying faint river sounds from blocks away, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Her panic was the first crack in their armor, but as the message hung there unanswered, I sensed their counter brewing, sharp and desperate. The wind off the Ohio River tugged at my coat as I walked the riverside path, the water's surface choppy under the mid-May sun, carrying faint echoes of distant barges. Emily's panicked text still burned in my pocket, her typos a telltale sign of her cracking composure, but I kept my pace steady, mind turning over the next steps. Justice wasn't rushed. It built like the river's current, patient and inevitable. Yet as I rounded a bend, a man in a plain suit approached briskly, clipboard in hand, his expression neutral but determined. "John Peterson?" he asked, thrusting a thick envelope forward. I stopped, the papers crinkling against my chest as I took them. "That's me." "You've been served," he said flatly, turning away without another word, his footsteps fading into the path's gravel. I tore open the seal right there, the wind rustling the pages like whispers of deceit. Lawsuit for defamation, claiming my anonymous tips had slandered their reputation, demanding damages and immediate business transfer. Their counterattack swift and venomous. I folded the packet, resolve hardening, and headed to my car parked nearby, driving straight to the office with the river receding in the rear view. By the time I arrived, the rumors had already spread. My inbox overflowed with forwarded company emails, anonymous blasts accusing me of embezzlement, twisting old decisions into scandals. Employees whispered in the hallways, avoiding my gaze as I passed, the air thick with uncertainty. One driver, Jessica, slipped me a note during a coffee break. "Not everyone believes it. Hang in." But the isolation gnawed, their ploy to erode my base before the kill. The door burst open mid-afternoon, Emily leading the charge, her face set in cold fury, Mark's voice crackling from her phone on speaker. Two police officers followed, badges glinting under the fluorescent lights, one carrying a warrant for an audit based on tips of irregularities. "Dad, you crossed the line," Emily snapped, slamming more papers on my desk. "Those leaks to investors, defamation. Now we're auditing everything. Hand over the keys or we'll shut this down." I stood slowly, keeping my voice even. "This is harassment, Emily. Fabricated claims won't hold." Mark's tone slithered through the speaker, manipulative as ever. "Come on, John, cooperate. We're just ensuring transparency for the family's sake. Officers, start with the financials." The cops moved in, rifling through cabinets, their radios buzzing softly. Employees gathered at the door, some swayed by the spectacle, murmuring support for the new direction. Emily paced, her impulsiveness showing in jerky steps. "You started this war, Dad. Face the fallout. Sign the transfer, and maybe we'll drop the suit." I met her glare, handing an officer a folder of my own backups. "Check these against what they've shown you. Discrepancies tell the real story." One cop paused, brow furrowing at the numbers, but Mark interjected smoothly. "Ignore that. It's outdated. Focus on the complaints we filed." The audit dragged, tension coiling like a spring. Fair play meant enduring this to counter stronger, but as they packed up empty-handed for now, the officers warned, "We'll be back if needed." Emily shot me a venomous look before storming out, the door slamming behind them. I locked it firmly, the click echoing in the empty space, flipping through the lawsuit under the fading office light. Their strikes only sharpened my resolve, but as shadows lengthened, a new determination flickered. Time to turn defense into an advance. Sleep evaded me that night. The house was too quiet, the lawsuit papers mocking me from the nightstand. Dawn urged action, and I drove to David's office downtown. The envelope on the passenger seat was a heavy anchor to yesterday's chaos. Traffic blurred past, my grip tight on the wheel as I reviewed the evidence mentally. Forgeries, debts, schemes, all compiled into a countersuit that would block their moves cold. David's desk was cluttered with files. His nod was approving as I laid out the proofs. "Solid, John. We'll file for an injunction against the transfer. Cite fraud and manipulation. This halts their audit too." We drafted quickly, my signature steady on the forms. By afternoon, we were in the local court. The courtroom was a small chamber with worn wood grains on the benches. The gavel's echo amplified the gravity. Emily and Mark sat across from us, their smug masks cracking slightly at my calm entrance. The judge peered over his glasses. "Proceedings for preliminary injunction in Peterson versus Brown." David presented first, projecting documents onto a screen. "Your Honor, evidence of forged financials used to coerce a transfer. Here are the originals versus their versions. Clear alterations." Emily leaned forward, her voice sharp with interruption. "Objection. Those are misrepresentations. We're modernizing a failing business," Mark added from his seat, a defensive edge creeping in. "Exactly. John's resisting progress. Our suit proves his defamation, sabotaging deals." I rose when called, my voice firm. "The truth isn't defamation. These manipulations trace back to Mark's past. Same patterns in his old firm. And Emily's debts explain the rush." The courtroom tensed, whispers rippling. The judge examined the slides, his questions probing. "Ms. Brown, explain these discrepancies," she faltered, impulsiveness flaring. "It's administrative errors. Nothing more," David countered swiftly. "Errors that benefit them financially? We request a halt on all actions pending a full review." The ruling came after deliberation, the gavel striking. Injunction granted, transfer and audit paused until the hearing. No further interference. Relief rippled through me, measured. Not triumph yet, but restoration, inching forward. As we exited, Emily pulled me aside in the hallway. Her whisper was laced with veiled fury. "This isn't over, Dad. You'll regret dragging us here." I held her gaze, noticing her hurried dial on her phone as I stepped toward the doors, the street sounds filtering in. Her threat hung like unfinished business, hinting at their next desperate ploy. The courthouse steps faded behind me as I merged into the bustling Cincinnati streets, the late May sun casting elongated shadows across the pavement, the distant hum of the Ohio River blending with traffic noise. Emily's whispered threat lingered like a bad aftertaste, her eyes flashing that familiar impulsiveness, but I kept my stride even, my mind already pivoting to countermeasures. Justice wasn't swayed by words. It demanded proof and timing. My phone vibrated in my pocket, insistent against my thigh. I pulled it out, the screen lighting up with her name. Hesitating for a beat amid the ebb and flow, I answered, my voice neutral. "Dad, it's me," Emily said, her tone shifting to feigned warmth like flipping a switch. "Look, that hearing was rough. Maybe we got carried away. How about dinner tonight? Just us at the Riverfront Steakhouse? Reconcile. Talk it out like family." I paused near a street bench, the breeze carrying faint river scents. Her invitation echoed the setup I'd suspected, a ploy wrapped in olive branches. Reconcile? After the threats and suits? A sigh on her end, scripted patience. "Come on, Dad, for old times." Mark agrees. Peace is better for everyone. 8 o'clock? My treat. Probing her desperation, I agreed cautiously. "All right, 8 it is. But no games, Emily. None at all. See you then." The line clicked, or so it seemed, but a faint rustle followed, the receiver humming with unguarded words like a door left ajar. She hadn't hung up properly, her impulsiveness striking again. Mark's voice filtered through, low and manipulative. "Good job, babe. Lawyers will be at the next table. Papers ready. He'll sign the voluntary transfer once we corner him. Make it look like his idea." Her reply, rushed and cold. "He better. If he refuses, we push the defamation harder. Can't let his leaks ruin our deals." I pressed the phone closer, heart steady but alert, catching every syllable as pedestrians blurred past. Their trap exposed in a blunder. Lawyers hidden, forcing my hand under the guise of peace. The title of this mess flashed in my mind. The Reconciliation Dinner, Masking Coercion. This ploy was clear. Fairness would turn it against them. My guest would ensure the reversal. The call finally dropped for real, a beep signaling the end. I pocketed the phone with a knowing smile, the overheard words echoing as I walked toward my car parked a block away. The engine's rumble soon drowned out the street noise, my thoughts shifting to preparations that would make their smiles fade. The drive home wound along familiar roads, the river peeking through trees now and then, its flow a reminder of steady progress amid turmoil. The afternoon faded into early evening as I pulled into the driveway, the house welcoming me with its quiet solidity. Key turning in the lock, I stepped inside, heading straight to my study. The lamp clicked on, casting a warm glow over the desk cluttered with files from weeks of digging forged reports, debt records, Mark's old schemes. Preparation was key to rightful triumph. Their mistake in that call handed me the edge. I settled into the chair, pulling up a secure line on my laptop, the one Harris had set up for discretion. Dialing the number, I waited as it connected. The ringtone was muted against the ticking wall clock. A voice answered, cautious but familiar. Michael, Mark's former associate from that collapsed firm, the one who'd lost everything to those manipulations. "Peterson? That you?" "Yes, Michael. Everything set for tonight?" I asked, my tone firm yet appreciative. He cleared his throat, a hint of resolve edging his words. "Absolutely. I've got the originals. Audits he faked, emails proving the siphons. Meet at the restaurant's side entrance at 7:50. This'll bury him." "Perfect. Bring everything. Timing is crucial. We'll spring it when they least expect." "Count on it. See you there." The call ended with a click, his confirmation solidifying the plan. I turned to the files, sorting them methodically. Emily's impulsive debts cross-referenced with company dips. Mark's patterns mirrored in our losses. Papers shuffled under my hands. Anomalies highlighted in red. Decimal tricks, phantom entries. This wasn't an ambush. It was an earned reckoning. Justice weaving through the facts. Standing, I rehearsed aloud, pacing the study floor. Funny, I brought someone too, I practiced, envisioning their faces paling as Michael entered, documents in hand. These prove your forgeries. Sign over or face exposure. Pauses for their retorts, my responses measured. No more games. Fairness ends this now. The words flowed, building confidence without haste. The afternoon light dimmed through the window, shadows lengthening across the rug. I packed the documents into my briefcase, the snaps echoing like final judgments, a symbol of the impending reversal. Glancing at the clock 7 already, I straightened my tie, resolve firm. Evening approached. The dinner was looming, but as I reached for my keys, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. A sharp trill cutting the quiet, heightening my nerves as I moved toward the hall, wondering who could be interrupting now. The doorbell's trill had been a minor distraction. A neighbor dropping off misdelivered mail, his chatter about the weather fading as I waved him off and slid into my car, briefcase heavy on the passenger seat. The drive to the riverfront steakhouse hugged the Ohio's banks, evening lights dancing on the water like scattered thoughts. The river's murmur was a steady undercurrent to my focused calm. Justice wasn't hurried. It arrived precisely. I pulled into the parking lot as dusk settled, the engine humming to a stop amid the glow of strung lanterns, my grip tightening on the briefcase handle. Stepping out, the cool air carried hints of grilled fare and distant laughter, grounding me as I approached the entrance, ready to flip their trap. The door swung open with a soft chime, the restaurant's warmth enveloping me. Low-lit booths, candle flickers casting elongated shadows across polished wood floors. I spotted their table in a secluded corner overlooking the river. Emily and Mark seated with 2 lawyers, stacks of papers neatly lined up like weapons at the ready. Their smiles were cold, practiced, masking the desperation I'd overheard. Emily rose slightly, gesturing to the empty chair. "Dad, glad you came. Let's make this easy." I sat deliberately, placing the briefcase at my feet, my voice even. "Reconciliation or another ambush?" Mark leaned forward, his manipulative charm on full display, sliding a folder across the table. "No ambushes, just papers for a voluntary transfer. Sign and we drop everything, suits, audits, for the family." One lawyer, a stern man with wire-rimmed glasses, added crisply, "It's straightforward, Mr. Peterson. Protects your legacy while allowing for modernization." Emily's eyes narrowed, insistent. "Sign for peace, Dad. We've got it all here. Fair terms." The documents fanned out like a losing hand, corners curling under the weight of lies, their pens poised expectantly. I scanned the pages slowly, the river's reflection shimmering through the window, a reminder of flows that couldn't be forced. Their desperation hung thick, but I met their gazes with a composed grin forming. "Funny," I said calmly, echoing the moment they'd scripted for coercion. "I brought someone too." A light knock sounded at the nearby side door, my signal to Michael. It creaked open and he stepped in, a folder tucked under his arm, his face etched with quiet determination from years of Mark's fallout. The table tensed. Emily's fork clattered softly against her plate, Mark's smile freezing mid-curl. "Michael? What the—" Mark started, his voice cracking with rare unease. Michael pulled up a chair, uninvited, nodding to me. "Evening. John invited me to share some history." He opened his folder, sliding the first document across a forged audit from Mark's old firm, signatures mismatched. "Start here. Your creative accounting that bankrupted us matches the fakes you used on Peterson Logistics." Emily fidgeted impulsively, fingers drumming the table. "This is nonsense. Who is he?" The lawyers exchanged glances, one whispering urgently. Shockwaves rippled, Mark's facade cracking further as Michael continued, another page following, the tension thickening like the gathering night outside. Michael laid out the next sheet, a timeline of siphoned funds from Mark's past deals, arrows linking directly to anomalies in our company reports. See this? Same pattern. Revenues puffed up, then vanished. I lost my savings to it. Now you're trying it again. Mark slammed a hand down lightly, his manipulative excuses faltering. That's ancient history, fabricated lies to sabotage us. But the lawyers shifted uncomfortably, one gathering papers hastily. We need to review this privately, the stern one muttered, his face draining of color as viability evaporated. Emily erupted impulsively, her voice rising in outbursts. Dad, you planned this? That's not fair. We're saving the business. I observed calmly, my voice steady. Fair? Like your hidden debts draining company cash? Michael has those too. He produced the records. Her rash investments, loans she'd buried, all cascading into view like dominoes toppling. Denials crumbled. Mark tried twisting the facts once more. Coincidences. Prove the intent. Michael countered with emails, printed in bold. Mark's instructions to fudge numbers, dated just before their first demand. The cascade linked back investor withdrawals I'd sparked, rumors they'd spread now boomeranging. One lawyer stood abruptly. This changes things. We can't proceed. Their frantic defenses echoed hollowly, Emily's cold dismissal fracturing into pleas. Wait, we can explain. It's not what it looks like. Justice wasn't loud. It was this quiet victory, the table's disarray mirroring their unraveling plans. Consequences hinted audits turning against them. Potential suits for fraud. My business secured without a signature. Family ties severed justly. No sentiment clouding the balance restored. As the lawyers backed out, murmuring retreats, and Emily buried her face in her hands, Mark glaring daggers that held no power, I rose with my briefcase, lighter now. Stepping out into the night, the river air cleared the lingering tension, stars pricking the sky above Cincinnati, a sense of closure wrapping around me like the gentle current below, legacy intact and peace earned. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.